In 1994, Weezer became one of the biggest alternative bands in the world. Their self-titled debut, the record everyone calls the Blue Album, was a total cultural juggernaut. It was the perfect blast of nerdy, guitar-driven pop that felt like a complete 180 from the grit and grime of the so-called grunge era. But for the follow-up, frontman Rivers Cuomo had zero interest in writing another hit record. No, he wanted to create a rock opera instead in space. Rolling Stone called it one of music's lost mythical masterpieces, while Vice called it better than almost everything Weezer has released in the last 15 years. Stereo Gum referred to it as perhaps the greatest what-if record. So what happened to this legendary album? Why was it abandoned, and what would it have actually sounded like? This is a story of Songs from the Black Hole, the greatest album Weezer never made. By the way, guys, in 6 years of doing my channel, this is the first time I've ever covered Weezer. To really get Songs from the Black Hole, you have to get inside the mind of Rivers Cuomo back in '95. On the surface, the guy was on top of the world. The Blue Album had gone multi-platinum, and Weezer were legit rock stars. 1 year prior, Weezer dropped their self-titled debut, universally known as the Blue Album, and instantly rewrote the rules for what alternative rock could sound like. While the rest of the world was still reeling from grunge's raw angst, Weezer came blasting in with a sound that was equal parts crunchy guitars, sugary melodies, and unapologetically nerdy. The album was a masterclass in power pop, blending catchy hooks with lyrics about garage bands, awkward crushes, and basically feeling out of place. It was the sound of four outsiders turning their quirks into anthems, and it hit like a lightning bolt. From the opening riff of My Name is Jonas, you're thrown into a world where vulnerability is actually cool and being geeky is seen as heroic. Tracks like Buddy Holly and Say It Ain't So became instant classics, mixing infectious choruses with just enough emotional bite to stick with you. The production, courtesy of Rick Ocasek from The Cars, gave everything a glossy sheen but never sanded off the band's rough edges. Every song felt like it could be someone's favorite, from the sun-soaked nostalgia of Surf Wax America to the yearning ballad Only in Dreams. What really set the Blue Album apart was its sincerity. Rivers' songwriting was honest and unguarded, turning everyday anxieties and heartbreaks into something universal. We could all relate to it. There's a sense of longing and awkwardness woven through the entire record, but it's delivered with so much heart that it feels triumphant rather than just sad. Weezer's debut didn't just offer a break from the darkness of the era, it gave a generation of misfits their own soundtrack. The Blue Album was a commercial and critical smash, going 5 times platinum in the States and launching Weezer into the stratosphere. Many of the songs featured on that album are still staples of alternative and mainstream rock radio where I live. But internally, Rivers was struggling. He was getting tired of the monotony of touring and started to believe that his own music was, as he put it, simplistic and silly. Here he was, a quiet, introverted songwriter suddenly thrown into this very loud, very public life, and the disconnect was starting to mess with his head. This wasn't just some rock star angst, it was a full-blown creative crisis. Rivers started diving deep into classical operas and rock musicals like Jesus Christ Superstar. He was drawn to their massive scale, their ambition, and just how they fused storytelling with music. He wanted to build something bigger, more complex, and more beautiful than anything Weezer had ever done. The whole idea of being a rock star felt alienating, like he was just a passenger on a bizarre trip he couldn't control. And that feeling planted the seed for an idea, a story that would be a metaphor for his twisted feelings about success. The stage wasn't going to be a stadium, it was going to be the vast, lonely emptiness of space. Rivers told Rolling Stone in 2010 that spending all his time and touring in a van felt like he was wasting his life. To achieve a unique sound with a sci-fi edge, he purchased new keyboards in early '95 and began developing the project by outlining concepts, composing music, and writing songs that were centered on his experiences with relationships, fame, and just life in Weezer. He told Rolling Stone in 2010, "I think I was planning to make the second Weezer album a sort of space travel themed rock opera with lots of synthesizers and new wave flavor over the Weezer rock sound, and then our bass player Matt." You know what, guys? Let's come back to this thought. The concept Cuomo came up with was Songs from the Black Hole. It was set in the year 2126. The story follows the crew of the spaceship Betsy 2, a nod to Weezer's first tour bus, as they headed out on a mission across the galaxy. The album was meant to play out pretty much like a movie, with songs flowing right into each other, complete with dialogue and musical motifs that would pop up again and again. There were several drafts of the album, with the first one dating back to November of '94, which was originally set on Earth. Most of the songs, interestingly enough, already existed in some shape or form, and they had to be rewritten to fit the songs for the black hole concept. The characters were all basically stand-ins for different sides of Rivers' personality. The ship's captain, Jonas, was voiced by Rivers himself. It was his doubtful side, the part that longed for a normal life. His crewmates, Juan and Dondo, played by guitarist Brian Bell and bassist Matt Sharp, were parts of him that were genuinely stoked about being famous. Then you had two main female characters, Maria, the bad girl love interest, and Laurel, the good girl who represented a stable, healthier path. Rivers even planned to have guest singers voice these parts, specifically Joan Wasser from the Dam Builders and Rachel Hayden from That Dog. And on top of it, there was even an M1, a robot who represented the band's management, pushing the mission forward no matter the cost. The story was a complicated love triangle set in a sci-fi world, all about Jonas's battle with temptation, duty, and just the growing feeling that the whole mission was kind of pointless. It was a deeply personal story hiding inside a big space adventure. To get the sound right, Rivers started messing with synthesizers, trying to mix Weezer's classical guitar crunch with a futuristic vibe. He spent Christmas of '94 at home in Connecticut, laying down the first demos on an 8-track, even pitch shifting his own voice to sing the female parts. The blueprint for a masterpiece was starting to come together. Band associate Carl Koch told Rolling Stone the band, and I quote, debated the semantics of how to pull songs from the black hole off, and indeed if it should have been done. Some of the songs were in fact rehearsed as a band, some were played out live, and some made it all the way to the second Weezer album, although by then the album concept was quite different. For decades, Songs from the Black Hole was just a legend, something fans whispered about online, but thanks to a whole bunch of leaked demos, official B-sides, and archival albums Rivers released himself, we can actually piece together what the lost record would have sounded like. The album was supposed to kick off with the track Blast Off, an explosive, synth-heavy opener that really sets the whole scene. The lyrics perfectly capture the crew's excitement, but also Jonas's anxiety as Betsy 2 takes off. The song serves as a metaphor for Rivers' life on the road, with him admitting that the song expresses the character's different feelings about heading off on a space mission. Or in other words, his different feelings about heading out on tour and up the charts with a rock band. From there, the opera would move through a chain of songs that would drive the story home. You Won't Get With Me Tonight shows you the intense back and forth dynamic between Jonas and Maria. Then a song like Super Friend would have shown the much healthier, sweeter connection that Jonas had with Laurel. One of the most powerful songs from this period was I Just Threw Out the Love of My Dreams. It's a heartbreaking ballad sung from Laurel's point of view. A gorgeous studio version with Rachel Hayden's singing lead was eventually released as a B-side for the El Scorcho single a couple years later. It gave us the clearest glimpse we have now of how the guest vocalist concept would have actually worked. Other tracks filled the story's emotional core. Tired of Sex and Get You, two tracks that fans would later hear on Pinkerton, were originally part of the opera as well, showing off Jonas's growing anger and frustration. She's Had a Girl is a short and sad song where Jonas finds out Maria has had his child, throwing him into even more turmoil. The whole thing was building to a huge climax with the beautiful somber ballad Long Time Sunshine, where Jonas decides to stay behind in space so the rest of the crew can go home. When you listen to these demos, you can just feel the raw energy and wild ambition of the project. It sounds like Weezer, but also like nothing they've tried before. So with this vision ready to go and songs already created, why was Songs from the Black Hole scrapped? Well, it all came down to the perfect storm of turmoil and a massive creative shift that happened through 1995 and 1996. A huge trigger was the brutal leg surgery Rivers had in March of 95. To fix a condition where one of his legs was shorter than the other, doctors had to surgically break his bone. He spent months in a painful steel brace that he had to manually crank every single day to stretch the bone. The agonizing recovery process wrecked him physically and emotionally. Suddenly, the fun sci-fi fantasy of Songs from the Black Hole felt completely disconnected from the dark, real pain he was going through. As he told Rolling Stone in 2010, "I had this really painful surgical procedure on my leg, which lasted 13 months in all, and took me to a place emotionally where the whole idea of the whole rock opera started to feel too whimsical for where I was emotionally, going through the pain of the procedure. And so I scrapped the whole idea and went to a more serious and dark place." That fall, another big change happened. Rivers enrolled at Harvard to study classical musical composition. Being thrown into a lonely life of a student made his songwriting take an even darker, more confessional turn. Hiding behind the metaphor of a space opera didn't really feel honest anymore. He started writing songs that were brutally direct, pouring all his loneliness and frustration right onto the page without any filter. The final nail in the coffin might have been the debut album from bassist Matt Sharp's side project, The Rentals. Rivers felt that The Rentals record had a lot of the same synth-heavy sounds and themes that he was playing with, which reportedly killed his enthusiasm for continuing down that path. By the spring of 1996, the decision was made. The ambitious rock opera was officially dead. The spaceship was taken apart before it ever got a chance to launch. With Songs from the Black Hole scrapped, its ashes gave rise to Weezer's second album, Pinkerton. Several of the most intense songs from the opera were saved, stripped of the sci-fi story, and repurposed for the new record. Tracks like Tired of Sex, Get You, No Other One, and Why Bother all made the cut, their raw energy now powering a more deeply personal, almost uncomfortably honest album. When Pinkerton was released in September of 96, it was a total bomb, critically and commercially. Audiences who fell in love with the sunny hooks of the Blue Album were turned off by this new dark, abrasive sound. Critics hated it. The backlash was so profound that it famously caused Rivers to retreat from that kind of raw personal songwriting for many years. But over time, something amazing happened. The album's reputation started to change. A new generation of fans and musicians discovered Pinkerton, hailing it as a misunderstood masterpiece and a cornerstone of 90s emo and alternative rock. Its influence just kept growing until it eventually was certified platinum, and today it's widely considered one of the best albums of the decade. Meanwhile, Songs from the Black Hole lived on as a myth. Its pieces have been scattered across B-sides, deluxe reissues, and demo compilations, letting dedicated fans painstakingly reassemble the album for themselves. These surviving tracks have earned incredible praise, with places like Rolling Stone and Vice calling the unreleased project a lost mythical masterpiece. That's better than a lot of the band's official work. To some, Rivers threw some cold water on the mythic status behind the album, admitting that Songs from the Black Hole was never as fully developed or as amazing as fans have made it out to be. He has suggested that the album's legendary status amongst fans is somewhat inflated compared to the reality of its unfinished state and narrative inconsistencies. If you want to dive deeper into more of music's lost legends, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification icon, and let me know in the comments what other unreleased album I should cover next. Songs from the Black Hole remains one of rock's most greatest what-ifs, a fascinating snapshot of a band at a creative crossroads, torn between cartoonish ambition and raw, painful honesty. In the end, honesty won, giving us Pinkerton, an album that has arguably had a far greater impact than any space opera ever could. But the legend of the lost album endures. It's a testament to the incredible ambition of a young songwriter and a tantalizing peek into an alternative timeline for one of modern rock's most beloved and confusing bands. We may never hear it as it was truly meant to be, but in the fragments left behind, we can still hear the echoes of the greatest album Weezer never made. That brings us to the end of today's video, guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again in Rock and Roll True Stories. Take care.